Thank you for turning to page 121. Today we're going to go back 40 years to July 1985 for Dragon number 99. This is in the battered era of Dragon magazine and TSR offerings as a whole. Unearthed Arcanas that had bindings that fell apart. That's all from this era. And the Dragon magazine suffered from it too. A lot of the covers have detached over time. A lot of them detached right when you opened it. But we're going to go through this page by page. We're going to take a look at what we were looking at in July 1985 from TSR. Today on page 121. Today we're going to dive into Dragon number 99 on sale 40 years ago this month. I'm always a little blown away when I realize how old some of these dragons are. Not that I'm old, they're old. I love this cover. This is a thief who's in some serious trouble. If that's not a crypt thing, he's got a lot of problems. This is still during the era of the bad bindings, bad covers of TSR, which we all had to deal with, and Unearthed Arcana especially, but Dragon magazine did not escape. There you go. But our first ad is for Warhammer from Citadel Miniatures out of Columbia, Maryland. Then we go to Iron Crown Enterprises. 2 new glimpses into the fantasy world of J.R.R. Tolkien from Iron Crown Enterprises out of Charlottesville, Virginia. I miss ICE. Dragon, July 1985. There we have the table of contents, the cover by Clyde Dunzing III. We have letters to the editor, and then we have an editorial from Kim Maughan. Then we jump over, finishing the letters to the editor. We have an index of advertisers, so if you need to find your advertiser quickly, there you go. The Legion of Heroes wants you for Battle System. Battle System First Edition. It was the thing. I had it. I played it. I love Battle System Second Edition. The Pendragon Company offers us from Chaosium. They are Albany, California. 80 pages of information in support of vivid, exciting Pendragon campaign. And then, of course, Call of Cthulhu, the original horror role-playing game. Call of Cthulhu is still around. Then we finish out our letters to the editor. We go to the forum, which is another form of letters to the editor. Wizzy System, Ulti-System, from Nichols Services, Columbus, Georgia. This was a huge manual, IBM or Mac, okay? So for your computer. And this is Dawn of the Ancients, Earthwood. Newest release, let's see, it's a fantasy world. Earthwood is a strategy play-by-mail game out of Miami, Florida. Science Fiction Book Club. You can't be a person of my age who grew up in the United States without having at least encountered this thing once. I was a member a number of times through the 70s and 80s. I love the Science Fiction Book Club. I got a couple of good books out of that. Then we take a look at the neutral point of view, examining the territory between good and evil. So many players take neutral as the do anything I want alignment. And of course it isn't. It's supposed to be a kind of a balancing type thing. And you'll kind of go with the flow. Like if you're lawful neutral and somebody new is in power, you'll go ahead and you'll work with them. But everybody takes it as I can do whatever I want. Chaotic neutral, kind of. But it's an interesting article. Get it all the easy way. Draco Digitalis. You get this from a single source. Purveyors of fine role-playing. This is a company that's offering basically resale out of Burton, Washington. Continuing our article of neutrality. GameTown, everything in games and puzzles. 32 organized pages with photos. It's a 1985 catalog. 32 pages and photos, 1,200 games and aids. These guys are GameTown out of San Diego, California. Everything in games and puzzles. Look at that. Patton vs. Rommel, the ultimate game of desert conflict from TSR. They were trying to get into the bookshelf board game kind of thing, like Avalon Hill. Tables and tables of troops. Many factors affect followers for fighters. These articles were gold back in the day because you didn't know how to do this stuff. You had to kind of wing it as the dungeon master. And I had done a few fighters establishing keeps by 85, and I appreciated articles like this. This is a rather long article. Flashing Blades from Fantasy Games Unlimited. And these guys are out of Roslyn, New York. think I'd know by now. They're in every issue of the Dragon. Continuing on our article on followers. This is actually a pretty good article. I recommend it. And then we go to Pacesetter for Chill, horror role-playing game out of Delavan, Wisconsin. Sandman, game of dramatic entertainment from Pacesetter. To survive, you must journey through a tempestuous world in search of mysteries to questions as tenuous as your own existence. So kind of a Cthulhu-type thing, I guess. I don't know. The Ecology of the Will-O-Wisp. I loved the ecology articles. I also loved Nigel D. Finley's writing. A very good writer of modules and articles. I love the Will-O-Wisp. It's a great thing to plague your characters with. The VIP of Gaming Magazine. Variants, interviews, and profiles. And this is from Diverse Talents out of Long Beach, California. Your guidelines and how to contribute to Dragon Magazine, rather. Over 1,000 fantasy figures. And this is from Ral Partha. Love Ral Partha. Let's see. I have this set. I think I have Tim the Enchanter there. Interesting. I inherited a lot of sets of lead figures when people left D&D. They knew I was staying, so a lot of times they'd sell them to me for nothing. And a couple of cases, guys just handed me the box and said, here you go. That's life in the big city. Advice on creating authentic urban environments. I've maintained for years that the urban environment in D&D can be one of the most deadly. There's a nice article for you. And then notice, finishing out the article, it tells us now to label our letter. If you're going to mail into Dragon Magazine, be sure to label your letter. The Free City of Krakow, an adventure module for Twilight 2000 from Game Designers Workshop out of Bloomington, Illinois. I still miss GDW. They brought us Traveler as well. The Role of Books. Fiction to inform, inspire, and entertain gamers. These are just a bunch of genre-type books, that fit the genre of D&D, and they would be book reviews. I've read a couple books based on these reviews. And then we have Lands of Adventures and Daredevils, both from Fantasy Games Unlimited. The Outcasts, Rafa Miniatures. Let's see, The Outcasts. Do I have any of these guys? One of the things I love about doing these Dragon magazines is I get to see if I have them or not. I remember seeing this one on the shelf, but it was like $15. Back in the day, $15 was kind of hard to come by. Raffam Company, Cambridge, Ontario, Canada. History of a Game That Failed. An essay on mistakes and how not to make them. Oh, this is about a DM whose game kind of fell on its face, and he gives all the reasons not to, or all the things that happened, and how not to make those mistakes. Continuing in that article, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Play by Mail. And this out of Play by Mail to ECI out of Charlotte, North Carolina. I never did a Play by Mail. I say that every time I do one of these, but it's true. Continuing on our article. And then we get Some Refuse to Die in the Aftermath from Fantasy Games Unlimited. Major advertiser in this era. FGU had some pretty interesting games. Space Opera is the main one that I remember reading and playing. And then we get an ad for Life in the Fast Lane Gets Even Faster. Car Wars Deluxe Edition from Steve Jackson Games. And they're out of Austin, Texas. I played some Car Wars. It wasn't a bad system. The GM I had running it was not very good. He wasn't really actually that knowledgeable of the rules. But it was an okay system. I know a lot of people loved it. Continuing on our article. For how to destroy a campaign, basically, or how to prevent that. Continuing out the article, very long one. And then we have an ad for Illuminati from Adventure Systems out of Houston, Texas. Steve Jackson game play by mail. And then we have Games Workshop US press release. Citadel Miniatures is pleased to announce release of the Lord of the Rings gaming miniatures. I had a few of these over the years. This is out of Columbia, Maryland. They're nice looking minis. Another gem from the Companions. This is Gems of Death. It's by the Companions. Just trying to see what system it's for. Then we have an ad for DC Heroes Superpowers. I thought that was kind of a weak name for it. It was fun that superhero games were so hot in '85, and it's important too, if you're a comic fan, that DC was going through the Crisis on Infinite Earths at this time. For folks that don't know, the Crisis on Infinite Earths was where DC took their existing universe, flushed it down the toilet and rebooted everything. All of 85 was why they flushed it down, and then 86 was what was left after that. It was an interesting time to be in comics. It was sad to see the characters I'd grown up with and loved go away, even though they got rebooted within a few months. It was still tough to see such things. Plus, the original Supergirl, Kara, didn't survive the Great Crisis. It was kind of sad. Then we have Ann McAfee's Dragon Riders of Pern come to life in a book versus book game, Nova Game Designs out of Manchester, Connecticut. Never played any of these. If anybody did, let me know if they're any good. The World Gamer's Guide. Before the internet, you couldn't find somebody to play with. You put a little, basically, personal ad here. Then we got an ad for Hyborian War, Imperial Conquest in the Age of Conan. And these are from Reality Simulations out of Tempe, Arizona. Coming attractions from TSR. TSR was not real focused on AD&D at this moment. They were trying to launch other lines because they were in some financial trouble, and they were hoping that when they threw something at the wall, it would stick. And then with the Indiana Jones, Nepal Nightmare, we have Proton Fire by for robot role-playing game. TSR's latest role-playing sensation, the Proton Fire game, is here. I never played that. Bloodstone Pass, Super Module H1, and that dovetailed with the Battle System First Edition. Amazing Stories, 60 Years of the Best Science Fiction, and this was by TSR. Dragon Tiles 2, Revenge of Rusak, I have those around here somewhere. Mystery of the Snow Pearls for D&D. Escape from Castle Karas, Super Endless Quest book. Dragons of War for Dragonlance, and Lankmar, City of Adventures. I bought a lot of the Lankmar stuff. It wasn't my cup of tea. I've read some of the Lankmar stuff. I like Fafhrd and Grey Mouser. I really didn't care much for the stories. So it's, and I've long since parted with the Lankmar stuff, but it had some stuff that was interesting. Are you missing a Dragon magazine in your lair? Here's a way to fill it in. And then you could send this to Hobby Shop, Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, and you can fill in your back issues of Dragon. Treasure Trove 2, a new system for swords and more. I loved the Treasure Troves. These were just basically magic items that people had come up with over time. This is a system, a sharp system for swords, where you could create new ways for your sword to have powers and intelligence. I love intelligence swords. I've done a video on them a couple of years ago. I may revisit the topic because I have a few new thoughts on it. But the thing about intelligent weapons, you have to be careful. It's more than just another NPC in the game. It's an NPC that can kind of have some undue influence over one or more of your player characters. So you've got to be careful with intelligent weapons. Continuing on, our fine system. A little stain from some game that I had this open for. 17 new treasures. Lots of new things. Potion of Pain Suppression, Ring of Energy, Rod of Melting. Lots of goodies here. And these, of course, would pop up in my game very quickly after I read this issue. Continuing it out. Monsters and Animals from Palladium Books out of Detroit, Michigan. It's an imaginative new book of extraordinary creatures. Sky Realms of Jorun, coming to Gen Con 18 Game Convention. And this is from, it doesn't say who's from, yes it does, Sky Realms. And then we have Game Lines bringing us the Archive, as a viewer was kind enough to tell me that that's what that's supposed to be, is Archive. And then it's a series of miniatures. I am not familiar with these guys. I like that one. Authentic Agencies Part 3, pulling back the curtain on the KGB and others for the Top Secret game. Played some Top Secret back in the day. Played Top Secret 2nd Edition in the late 90s and early 2000s. Both were really good systems. I could play either one. And we continue on our article, and we have an ad for music for adventure gaming from Lotus Records in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Not easy to come by in the 80s. Music. We played different albums as we played. A lot of times, especially at this time, we would just turn on MTV in the background and let it play either quietly or muted. And then when a video came up that we all liked, hey, wait a minute, we'd watch the video. It was just how we used to game. I miss that for MTV, I really do. Continuing on our article, and we finish out our article on real agencies for Top Secret, and then we have an ad for The Complete Strategist, which is series of game stores that were on the East Coast of the United States. Write on. Do you have a question about an article? Go ahead and write to them. Are you suffering from tableitis? This is an ad for the then new DM screen. I use this DM screen. My old DM screens are showing their age, so I only trot them out for special games, but I use this DM screen all the time. Toys R Us was closing them out in 86 and 87. I was in a kind of a weird job that had me driving a lot, so I was able to go around to all the Toys R Us and buy them for $2 each. I gave away like 4 of them. If Adventure has a game, it must be Indiana Jones from TSR. The Adventures of Indiana Jones. And then we have some fiction, Denim and the Golem. Don't remember reading this one. Doesn't mean I didn't. It's 40 years ago after all. We have an ad for the Role-Playing Game Association, the RPGA network. I did not join in the 80s. I did join in the 2000s. I kind of wish I had joined in the 80s. Polyhedron was an interesting magazine. And then we have the Ares Science Fiction Gaming section. And those have to be the Soviet super soldiers. So we have our own table of contents and our own editorial by Roger Moore. And we have Tanks a Lot, Vehicle Combat, and Star Frontiers Gaming. I used to love the Star Frontiers articles in here. I was playing Traveler primarily at the time. I didn't play Star Frontiers until later, but I still liked reading the articles. It would give me ideas. Continuing on our article for combat, Vehicle Combat, and Star Frontiers. And then we go to Playbots and Battle Mechs, a look at the Proton Fire game. I don't remember that game at all. I don't remember seeing it on the shelf. I don't remember even the ads in Dragon Magazine. So if anybody did play Proton Fire, let me know. It's Clobberin' Time, the Marvel Superheroes game from TSR. Played this a little bit. Pretty interesting. I don't like D100 or percentage based games. I realize all D&D is, but it's just a game I didn't really care much for. We played Champions. I stayed with that. Continuing our article for Proton Fire. And then we have the Chronicles Continue for Dragons of Winter Night for Dragonlance by Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman. And then we go to the Marvel file. Back in the USSR, Vanguard, Darkstar, Ursa Major, and the Gremlin. These were interesting characters in the comic books. I like these Soviet super soldiers. Have lots of comics with them in it. Danger on a Budget, Unexpected and Unknown, and Gamma World Adventuring. That's kind of neat. I like that. An ad for Casting Your Own Figures through the Duncan Company out of Calvert, Texas. And the choices are yours from TSR. Super Endless Quest games. Not just Endless Quest. Super Endless Quests. Continuing out our Gamma World article, we go to the convention calendar. Let's find Gen Con. I was supposed to go to this Gen Con. I've shared that story many, many times. I was supposed to go to this Gen Con with my then girlfriend, now wife, and a couple other guys from a gaming table. And we were all set to go, and I got called out of town, and I spent the entire time down in Florida on a job that went south very quickly, no pun intended, and I didn't even stay in that job. In fact, that was the last thing I did for that job. But at least I missed Gen Con, right? They had a great time, by the way. Finishing out our cons. So just jump in your Wayback Machine for 40 years, and you can go to these conventions. Villains and Vigilantes from Fantasy Games Unlimited. I played V&V. In fact, it was the first superhero role-playing game I played. Not too long after I started playing D&D. We went over to Champions in 82, and I never looked back. One-on-one adventure books, new from TSR. And then we go to the Gamer's Guide. These are kind of personal ads again. This is some stuff to advertise your fanzine or your own full-figure character if you want to draw it up. And then Search for Adventure for Gen Con 18, August 22nd through the 25th. And then we get Wormy. Gotta love Wormy. Wormy gets 2 pages in this issue. Wormy's usually good for 3. Dragonmirth. Love Dragonmirth. Sometimes I would just jump right to this. And then Snarf Quest by Larry Elmore. Continuing out Snarf Quest, and then we get an inside ad for Paranoia, a role-playing game of darkly humorous future from West End Games. Paranoia has since become published by Mongoose Publishing. And then we have 2 new fantasy board games from Iron Crown Enterprises, Cleric's Revenge and Riddle of the Ring, ICE. ICE put out some good stuff. And that's it. That's all we have for this kind of tattered and battered issue of Dragon Magazine. Like I said, it was an era that Dragon didn't have very good bindings. I believe it ends in issue 100, which will be next month, and then the ones going forward had better bindings, if I recall correctly. But that's all I have today on page 121. I want to thank you for your time. Thanks for watching. Please leave any comments. If you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe. Tell your friends. Still trying to grow the channel, and I need your help to do that. Also, please take a look at the Patreon. I want to keep the channel going, and I need your help on that as well. But that's it for today on page 121. I want to thank you for your time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.